What's going on, everyone? MMA 30 Minutes here to do a breakdown of UFC Fight Night 239. I've put in the hours, I've done the research, I've listened to the sharps. I'm going to tell you what everybody is saying, who people are picking for DraftKings, what they're putting their money on for bets in less than 30 minutes. Let's not waste any time and get into it. First fight we're going to talk about is Gigoryu versus Chad. Gig's 31 years old with 8 knockouts on his record. He's got some decent power, karate background, can throw in some takedowns. He's probably an early KO or bust. Gig does train with Aljo, so he's got a decent camp. Chad isn't a great fighter, but he's fighting for his job here. He'll probably get cut by the UFC if he loses. This should be a striking battle, which does play to Chad's strength. He does have some third round KOs on his record, so this fight is probably a pass on DK. But if we had to take a pick, Gig is going to be the pick. And a sprinkle bet on Chad by third round TKO KO would be the bet. Next fight, we're going to talk about Mitch versus Tiago. No one seems to be really impressed with Mitch. It's a short notice fight. He's like an ex-druggie who went to prison, so he's a tough guy. He's had some knockouts, but his skill-wise is just kind of lacking. It's a really tough spot here for him, especially if he tries to wrestle. Tiago is just going to smash. Unless something crazy happens, it's Tiago. He's the pick all day by submission. For DK, he's 9,300, so he's going to need a few takedowns or a round one finish to pay that off. But more than likely in the 9 case, he's definitely one of the safer picks up there. So as far as a bet, Tiago by submission is the bet. Next fight we're going to talk about is Jacqueline versus McKenna. Jacqueline lost her first fight and then came back and knocked out their name Mouse Rat in her second fight. It's not the best matchup probably on the ground for Jacqueline, since McKenna is obviously a wrestler. But we'll watch some tape on her and listen to a couple people's takes on Jacqueline. She doesn't have the worst skills on the ground. We did see her kind of get held a little bit by Mouserat on her back for a bit, which is something McKenna could do to her. But Jacqueline's definitely got the advantage on the feet. If that's where this fight does end up staying, Jacqueline also does have a pretty big reach advantage. It's a tough fight to call. I mean, again, if this stays on the feet, Jacqueline's going to be throwing some hard shots and looking for a finish. She does have a lot of finishes. McKenna's just going to be trying to take her down and holding her. Don't necessarily see a finish out of McKenna on the ground. So as far as DraftKings, you just kind of pick your fighter here. They're both at 8,000 and 8,200. So you probably want one of these fighters in your lineup. If you can still get some plus money on Jacqueline to win, that would be the bet. It's a 50-50 fight. Could go either way. So if you're getting some plus money still on Jacqueline, that would be the bet to make. Next fight, we're going to talk about Danny versus Josh. Danny can throw a ton of strikes. This could be, really good, obviously, for DraftKings, but he is very hittable. He does train now with Cub Swanson. He does throw consistent volume and pushes guys back, which could make it tough for Josh. Josh is typically a low volume guy, kind of looking for those hard KO shots, even though he doesn't really knock too many people out. Josh has only been finished once. He has tried a bunch of takedowns in the UFC. He just doesn't seem to get them. So the dog, Danny, is the pick here, and he's going to be a good pick for DraftKings, especially if he wins. He's going to score pretty high with all those significant strikes, but it's going to come, definitely with some ownership. He's a popular dog this week. So DK pick is going to be Danny. And the bet, the fight doesn't go the distance. Just a little sprinkle on that, because Josh does get, does hit pretty hard. it's not a super confident pick, but I have seen some sharps on betting fight doesn't go to distance. Next fight, Fiallo versus Osborne. Fiallo, he's got bad defense but decent offense. He was finished in his first UFC fight. He did get the finish in his second UFC fight. You know, Osborne has been working and training on his wrestling. He does have some round one, stoppage potential. It's a good fight to target on DraftKings. Fiallo is the lean with some of the upside that he shows, but no one's going to fault you for putting, some Osborne in your lineup too as a dog as well. The bet for this is the fight ends by submission or fight doesn't go the distance. Next fight we're going to talk about is Chelsea versus Nunes. Both fighters are cutting down weight for this fight. Nunes does have a decent amount of volume on her feet. She can throw some pretty big bombs. Chelsea can, mix in some takedowns. She's the more rounded fighter in this fight. This is women's MMA. So, what do we do? This is kind of a low level spot. Chelsea, gets some takedowns. She could possibly see her getting the finish on the ground, but probably just more some control time. And could Nunes, knock her out on her feet? Yeah, sure. So the field is really split here. Some people think this is a good fight to target on DraftKings, and some say this is a pass fight. But from what I'm hearing, the people that are saying pass they're just saying pass because it's women's MMA. Woods was on the optimal last week, so could that happen again? Yeah, obviously it could. Or could this just be a stupid low scoring fight? Yes, that is the case. So take your side here. The pick is going to be Chandler for DK because she does have that upside for the takedowns. But there's going to be no bet here. So next fight as we roll through this, we got Levy going against Mike Davis. Long layouts for both these dudes. Mike is coming off a shoulder surgery. Levy's wrestling is decent. It's not great. He's only really, fought and wrestled against, some bad fighters, but he is training in Las Vegas now. He has been for a little while, so maybe he's improved. Davis is a decent fighter, but all that, time off is a pretty big concern. He's fought 4 times in the UFC. He only lost his, first time, which was a debut to Gilbert Burns. So that's understandable. 9 takedowns in his last fight. So for DK, it's definitely going to be Davis. It's either, take Davis or Thiago is where everybody's kind of at. And Davis seems to be the lean because he's got that potential to score some more, takedowns because Levy could possibly get back up a little bit. So yeah, the pick is going to be Davis. With those takedowns, with the submission attempts, he's got decent fight IQ. So pick for DK, Davis, and then the bet would be Davis and by submission. Next fight we're going to talk about is GM3 versus Bam Bam. This is a minus 175 at the moment to end inside the distance. Submission, for GM3 or maybe a knockout for Bam Bam. Bam Bam does have some power on his feet. But Bam Bam seems to be going on the downside in his career right now. He's had some back-to-back losses. GM3 isn't like super impressive right now in his career, but he's not totally suck ass. So Bam Bam has lost 2 times, by sub, and that is what GM3 is known for, getting those submissions. So for, the pick is going to be GM3 here, not a super ton of confidence in it. But everyone seems to kind of think GM3 is going to get it done here by submission. The lean, the lean's going to be GM3 by submission here. But for DraftKings at 9,100, when you have Thiago and Davis right around him, it's going to be tough to play GM3 just because he doesn't typically score very well. Even when he does get the submission, though, he is kind of low volume. He does just get that like one takedown and then ends up finding the submission. So he is the pick for DraftKings. He would be the bet too as well by submission, but not like super trying to get out of the way to play him in DraftKings. Next fight we're going to talk about is Macy versus Panay. This is a rematch. Macy got the second round sub in the last fight. That was the last time Panay had been finished. Statistically, women's fights rematches go completely different. I know most rematches tend to go completely different, but women's, like the rate for them going completely different is just super high. So a lot of time it's because that's what they do. They just prepare nonstop to fix what they did in their last fight against that opponent that they already fought. And they almost train too much for that. So with that said, Macy shoots for takedowns and brings the pressure, which is good for DraftKings. But a 9K, again, that's hard to get to. I would say the only thing you'd want to consider is she does have some lower ownership on DraftKings. She's coming in probably about 20% or less ownership on DraftKings. So there is a play for playing her on there. This fight probably does go to decision. So the DraftKings pick is going to be Macy. I have seen a few sharps, a couple of them that have put a little sprinkle on the fight doesn't go the distance, just in case Macy does get that second round sub again. So if you can still get some plus money on that, that might be the bet. But Macy is definitely going to be the pick for DraftKings. All right, next fight is Isaac versus C-Rod. This is one of the more fun fights of the card, the one everyone's kind of looking forward to. Isaac has never been out of the first round. He just takes everybody down. Isaac is never seen a second round. So the big question everyone's talking about is his cardio. But, he's been, according to his social media, he's been training hard. He's getting, a ton of cardio in, and he's training with Youssef Zalal, which if you guys know who he is, he's just like a cardio machine. So, obviously we haven't seen him out of the first round. That doesn't mean that he can't get, out of the first round. It's just going to gas. So there's a question mark there for cardio. There's also a question mark too. Can you really trust what these guys are saying? If they say they're training with these guys and working on this, I mean, how many times have we heard fighters say that and not be true? So C-Rod is a good fighter. He did beat the, high prospects, Simon or however you say his name. He is coming up a weight class. Isaac is the pick here, especially on DK. Even if he doesn't get a finish, he could score up a lot of points with some takedowns, especially at 8,500. That could come out to be a pretty good score. He will be very popular on DK. So DraftKings, he'll be probably the third highest owned guy. C-Rod, I did see some early love this week on C-Rod, just because he is a well-rounded fighter, but I'm not really seeing it anymore. So Isaac, again, he's going to be the pick, and the bet is going to be by sub. Definitely a fight you want to target on DraftKings. More of a lean to Isaac, but I mean, definitely I'm going to have, and I'd recommend a little bit of a sprinkle, on C-Rod, especially at some lower ownership. Next fight coming in, we got Kennedy going against OSP. As of now, Kennedy is the highest, owned fighter on DraftKings. It's understandable why he is. He's just a touch higher than Tuivasa, but he is the highest owned. Kennedy has never finished a fight in the UFC in the first round. So is this it? OSP, he's old, he's slow. Seemingly he's probably just there to collect a paycheck. And Kennedy has that power to finish him quick. So could this be the first time Kennedy gets that quick round bonus on DraftKings? Maybe. But at 9,500 makes it kind of tough, especially again when you've got Davis and Thiago, who could score better, but the confidence level for Kennedy, I would say, is a little bit higher than both of those. So just ask yourself, does this fight go to rounds 2 or 3, and what does that look like, for Kennedy as far as scoring? So Kennedy is definitely the pick for DraftKings. The bet is Kennedy, by finish rounds 2 or 3. You could put a tiny sprinkle at OSP at 5% ownership if something crazy does happen in this fight. He would make the optimal lineup. All right, next fight we've got Ange versus Battle. Ange, puts on a pretty good pace. He goes for those takedowns. And he really hasn't fought anyone that's been that good. I'm not saying Battle is that good, but Battle is a pretty good striker. Ange has slowed down later in fights. So there is some question mark on his gas tank. As far as DraftKings, this is pretty much a must-play fight. Everyone's saying on DraftKings. Both have pretty decent floors and decent ceilings. Battle is going to be the pick on DraftKings, but some ownership percentage on getting Ange in your lineups is probably worth it. There is going to be some ownership on Ange. He is probably going to be the highest owned dog behind Tybura and Danny Silva. But the bet's going to be, the pick's going to be Battle here, and the bet is going to be Battle by KO or sub. All right, and before we get into the main event, just a couple things. I did just watch the weigh-ins and the face-offs. There's not a whole lot to report back from that. Bam Bam did look pretty good and in decent shape. McKenna just looked bad, like she was just kind of drained and kind of out of it, but she just tends to kind of have that look sometimes. Those are the only real takes from the weigh-ins and the face-offs. A little bit about the channel is that I will be getting these videos out on Friday nights now versus Saturday. They give you a little bit of time to get finished getting those lineups in and to get those bets in as well. So be looking for these to post on Friday night. Remember, I take all the information that all the pros, all the cappers, all the content creators are saying 80 plus hours in the week. I watch all of that. I listen to all of it. I take notes on all of it. I analyze all of it, and I put it together so you guys have all that information for every UFC fight, and you can get it in under 30 minutes. The last fight we're going to talk about is Tuivasa versus Tybura. Tai Tuivasa is a big, powerful puncher. He has been finished 3 of his last fights. We've seen him come back before, but there is some concern that he is on his downslope, and there is some concern with that injury that he had, especially against the wrestler. He is basically, he's KO or bust. And he's 1-in-5 career in his fights over 7 minutes. So his fights just don't seem to go over 7 minutes. Something to note about DraftKings on ownership that's kind of important is this fight will be a lot lower owned as far as main event fights does go on DraftKings. So there is some leverage on there, especially being a 5-round fight, but no one thinks that this fight is going to be going 5 rounds. Tybura is getting up there in age. Tybura is, more likely to get that finish in, the middle rounds, possibly 2, possibly, 3. He did just get, KO'd, in his last fight. So he's coming off a knockout loss, but, Tybura is going to be the pick here, but good luck sweating out that first 7 minutes from Tai Tuivasa with those big shots. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for next week. I'm going to be breaking down, what all the pros, all the cappers, all the content creators are saying for UFC Fight Night 240. Thank you for watching, and good luck today with your DraftKings picks and your bets for Tai Tuivasa versus Tybura.